The meeting room on Proxima Station was filled with representatives from 40 different worlds. Daniel Cross sat in the human chair wearing his usual friendly smile. He had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years now, and everyone knew him as the man who never stopped being polite. Even when other species insulted humanity, even when they made jokes about weak humans, Daniel just smiled and nodded. Today was different, though nobody knew it yet. The Krell Dominion had sent their top military commander, General Thaxron, to make an announcement. The large reptilian creature stood at the center podium, his scales gleaming under the station lights. He spoke in a deep voice that echoed through the chamber. The Krell Dominion hereby claims the human colony world of Kepler 442b. Our scientists have discovered valuable minerals beneath the surface. The humans have 24 hours to evacuate their people. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. Several alien species nodded their approval. Some whispered to each other. A few looked at Daniel to see his reaction. The human ambassador kept smiling, but his fingers gripped his datapad a little tighter than usual. Ambassador Cross, the council chair said, "Does humanity wish to respond?" Daniel stood slowly. "We have 14,000 civilians on that world. Families, children, they have lived there for 15 years. We built schools and farms. We made that planet into a home." General Thaxron laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Then you should have built it on a world without resources we need. 24 hours, human. Be grateful we are giving you that much time." Other species in the room chuckled. The humans were always so soft, so willing to back down. It was almost boring how predictable they were. Daniel sat back down. He kept smiling, but he sent a quick message on his datapad. Just 3 words. They crossed the line. Far above Earth, Commander Lisa Grant commanded the Orbital Defense Station Unity. She was a veteran of the Deep Space Patrol, a woman who had spent 20 years protecting human interests with nothing but patience and careful words. Her crew of 200 watched their screens as the Krell warships moved into position around Kepler 442b. "Commander, we have weapons lock capability," her tactical officer said. His name was Kyle Morris, a young man with quick reflexes and quicker thinking. "Stand down," Lisa said quietly. "We have orders from Earth. Let the diplomats handle this." Kyle looked at her with frustration in his eyes. "Ma'am, there are 14,000 people down there." "I know exactly how many people are down there, Lieutenant. I helped establish that colony. Now follow your orders." Lisa watched the screen as the Krell ships formed a blockade pattern. She had seen this before on other human worlds and other systems. The pattern was always the same. The council species would push, humanity would protest, then humanity would back down. It had been happening for decades. She wondered when it would stop. She wondered if it ever would. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Peter Hayes stood in his office looking at the evacuation order. He was the colony administrator, responsible for every man, woman, and child on the planet. 15 years of work, 15 years of building something beautiful, and now they had 24 hours to pack up and leave. His assistant, a young woman named Claire Dixon, stood in the doorway. "Sir, what do we tell people?" "Tell them the truth. Tell them to pack what they can carry. Tell them we are leaving our home because the Krell want what is under it." "That's not fair," Claire said, her voice shaking. "No, it's not. But since when has the galaxy been fair to humans?" Peter walked to the window and looked out at the colony. He could see the central plaza where children played. He could see the farmlands that fed everyone. He could see the solar arrays that powered their homes. All of it built by human hands, all of it about to be abandoned. He sent out the evacuation order and tried not to think about what it meant. Back on Earth, President Victoria Lang prepared to address her planet. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much compromise. She had been elected on a platform of peaceful expansion, of proving that humanity could be a force for good in the galaxy. Now she had to tell her people that peace had a price, and sometimes that price was too high. Her chief of staff, a man named Gregory Patel, handed her the speech prepared by the diplomatic corps. She read it once, then set it aside and wrote her own. When the cameras turned on, every human on Earth and in space stopped to watch. Victoria looked directly into the camera and spoke from her heart. "My fellow humans, today the Krell Dominion has ordered us to abandon the colony on Kepler 442b. They want the minerals under our homes, and the Galactic Council has decided that keeping the peace is more important than protecting our rights. We will comply with this order because we are a peaceful people. We will evacuate our citizens because we value life above property." She paused, her hands gripping the podium. Those who knew her well noticed the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her voice. "But I want every human to remember this day. Remember that we chose peace not because we had no other choice, but because peace is what we believe in. Remember that we smiled and walked away not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to control ourselves." She looked down for a moment, then back up at the camera. "And remember that there may come a day when we stop choosing peace, when we stop smiling, when we remind the galaxy who we really are." The broadcast ended. Across Earth and her colonies, humans sat in silence. Some felt angry. Some felt sad. All of them felt something shifting, something changing deep in the collective human spirit. In the bars of New York and the tea houses of Beijing, in the homes of London and the streets of Lagos, humans talked quietly about what they had just heard. Their president had said something important, something that felt like a warning. On Proxima Station, Daniel Cross packed his belongings. He had one more day of meetings, one more day of smiling while other species treated humanity like children who needed to learn their place. He could do one more day. He looked at himself in the mirror and practiced his smile. It looked the same as always, friendly and open and kind. But behind his eyes, something had changed. Behind his eyes, he was counting down to the moment when humanity would stop pretending. The galaxy had gotten comfortable with gentle humans. They were about to learn that gentle was a choice, not a limitation, and every choice could be unmade. The evacuation of Kepler 442b was not going smoothly. The Krell had given humanity 24 hours, but moving 14,000 people off a planet took time and careful planning. Transport ships arrived from nearby systems, loading families and their belongings as quickly as safety allowed. Peter Hayes coordinated everything from the Colonial Administration building. He had spreadsheets tracking every ship, every family, every piece of critical equipment they could save. They were running behind schedule, but they would make it. They had to make it. General Thaxron watched from orbit with growing impatience. The Krell commander had expected the humans to scatter like frightened prey animals. Instead, they were conducting an organized retreat, taking their time, following proper safety procedures. It annoyed him. "Fire a warning shot," he ordered his weapons officer. "Show these humans we are serious." "Sir, they are evacuating as ordered," the officer replied. "I said fire a warning shot. Near the largest transport ship. Let them see what happens when they move too slowly." The weapons officer hesitated, then followed orders. A plasma bolt streaked through space and exploded near the colony ship Mayflower. The ship was old, designed for slow cargo runs, not combat maneuvers. The explosion sent debris spinning outward, and several pieces punched through the hull. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the ship. The captain, a man named Vincent Cole, immediately sealed the damaged sections and checked for casualties. The report came back quickly. 3 children in the observation deck had been killed by debris. The emergency bulkhead had closed too slowly. Their names were Sophie Turner, age 7, Jacob Cole, age 9, and Emma Price, age 5. The news reached Earth in minutes. It spread through every human colony, every ship, every station. 3 children, killed by a warning shot, murdered because humanity was not moving fast enough to abandon their own world. Daniel Cross was in another council meeting when his datapad buzzed. He looked down at the message and his smile froze on his face. Around the chamber, alien representatives were discussing trade routes and mining rights. They barely noticed when the human ambassador stood up and began gathering his materials. "Ambassador Cross," the council chair said, "we are in the middle of negotiations." Daniel stopped moving. He stood perfectly still for a long moment, his back to the assembly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and calm. "Too calm. Negotiations are over. Not just this one. All of them. Every single one." He turned to face the chamber. His smile was completely gone. The aliens who saw his face that day would later describe it as the most frightening thing they had ever seen. Not because he looked angry, but because he looked absolutely empty, like something inside him had died and left nothing but cold determination. The Krell just killed 3 human children. They fired on an evacuation ship. They murdered kids because we were not moving fast enough to abandon our home. The chamber went silent. Even General Thaxron, watching via hologram from his flagship, seemed to realize something had changed. This council allowed it. This council created the conditions where species like the Krell think they can kill human children without consequences. So let me be very clear about what happens next. Daniel walked toward the exit, his steps slow and measured. Every human representative is leaving council space. Every embassy is closing. Every joint operation is ending. Every trade agreement is void. Every diplomatic channel is shutting down. We are going home, all of us, and we are not coming back. You cannot simply leave the council, the chair protested. There are procedures, protocols. Daniel stopped at the doorway. We followed your procedures for 300 years. We smiled while you insulted us. We negotiated while you stole from us. We compromised while you pushed us around. And where did it get us? Our children are dead. He looked directly at the hologram of General Thaxeron. You wanted to see how fast humans can move when properly motivated. You were about to find out. The broadcast ended. Daniel Cross walked out of the council chambers and never returned. Within 6 hours, every human in council space began withdrawing. Embassy staff packed up and left. Trade ships returned to human ports. Scientists abandoned joint research projects. Military liaisons on council vessels requested immediate transfer home. No explanations, no debates, no negotiations. They just left. The galaxy watched in confusion. Some species thought the humans were having a collective tantrum. Others worried that something bigger was happening. The smart ones started preparing for what might come next. On Earth, President Victoria Lang stood in the war room deep beneath the Capitol building. It was a place that had not been used in 200 years, not since humanity had decided to put aside their weapons and reach for the stars in peace. Now the room was full again, filled with military commanders who had trained for a war they never expected to fight. General Paul Dixon commanded Earth's ground forces. Admiral Karen White led the space fleet. Intelligence Director Chris Morgan knew secrets that would terrify the Council if they ever learned the truth. They all stood around a holographic display showing the galaxy, waiting for their orders. Victoria looked at each of them. 3 children are dead. The Krell killed them, but the Council allowed it. For 300 years we have smiled and played nice, hoping the galaxy would see us as partners, as equals. Instead, they saw prey. What are your orders, Madam President? Admiral White asked. Victoria took a deep breath. Open the archives. Declassify everything. Show them what we are capable of when we stop being nice. Show them why we chose peace in the first place. General Dixon nodded slowly. Are we going to war? No. We are going to remind them what war with humanity actually means. We are going to demonstrate our capabilities so clearly, so completely, that they will beg us to go back to being peaceful. And then, when they understand what we are, we will decide if we want to smile again. She placed her hands flat on the table. Gentlemen, lady, for 300 years we have hidden our teeth. We pretended to be something we are not. We let them think we were weak because we did not want to be the monsters we used to be. But they have forgotten that we became peaceful by choice, not by nature. It is time to remind them. Chris Morgan pulled up files that had been sealed since the early days of space exploration. Plans for weapons that violated 36 council treaties. Ship designs that were banned by galactic law. Military tactics that were considered too brutal for modern warfare. All of it had been created by humans, then locked away when they decided to pursue peace. How far do we go? He asked. As far as necessary, Victoria replied, but no further. We are not becoming monsters. We are showing monsters what we can do if pushed. There is a difference. On Kepler 442b, the evacuation continued. Every human on the planet now knew about Sophie, Jacob, and Emma. They knew their children had been murdered by a species that thought human lives were worth less than minerals. They moved faster now, but not out of fear. Out of fury. Peter Hayes stood at the spaceport watching the last ships load. Claire Dixon stood beside him, tears running down her face. We are coming back, right? She asked. After this is over, we are coming back? Peter looked up at the Krell ships in orbit. Yes, we are coming back. And when we do, there will not be any Krell here to tell us to leave. Across human space, people watched their governments mobilize. They saw ships being pulled out of storage, weapons being tested, soldiers being called up from reserves. Some were excited, some were scared. All of them understood that something fundamental had changed. The smile was gone. Humanity had spent 3 centuries being gentle, being patient, being the species that always chose peace. Now they were going to show the galaxy why that choice had been so important. Why keeping humanity peaceful had been the best thing for everyone. The Krell had killed 3 children. The Council had allowed it. Now they were all going to learn what happened when you pushed humans too far. They were going to learn that the scariest predator is not the one that is always violent. It is the one that chooses peace, then stops choosing it. The galaxy had felt safe for 300 years because humanity smiled. Now Earth had stopped smiling and the stars were about to remember what fear felt like. General Thaxeron stood in the Colonial Administration Building on Kepler 442b, the same office where Peter Hayes had worked for 15 years. The humans were gone now, evacuated to other worlds. The Krell had their prize and the minerals beneath the surface would make the Dominion wealthy. Begin mining operations, Thaxeron ordered his engineers. I want full extraction within the month. Outside the windows, Krell soldiers patrolled the empty streets of the human colony. They laughed at the abandoned homes, the small gardens, the playgrounds built for human children. Such a weak species, they thought. Such a waste of a good planet. Then the sensors went dark. Every display in the command center suddenly showed nothing. Not static, not errors, just nothing. It was as if every electromagnetic signal in the system had been swallowed by something invisible. Report, Thaxeron demanded. His sensor officer looked confused. Sir, I cannot explain this. We have lost all readings beyond visual range. Communication with our fleet is down. Long-range detection is offline. Everything is just gone. Fix it, Thaxeron growled. Now. Before the officer could respond, something appeared on the visual displays. Ships. Human ships. Dozens of them, emerging from quantum slipspace in perfect formation. But these were not the cargo vessels and exploration ships the Krell knew. These were warships, massive and dark, bristling with weapons that looked nothing like the peaceful technology humanity usually displayed. The lead ship was enormous, a dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest Krell battlecruiser. Its hull was painted dark gray, almost black, with a name written in human script along the side, Retribution. Captain Nicole Sanders stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching her screens as the Krell fleet scrambled to respond to their sudden arrival. She was a 40-year veteran of Earth's military, a woman who had trained for this moment her entire career while hoping it would never come. All ships, weapons free, she said calmly. Target military vessels only. 0 civilian casualties. Make it clean. Her tactical officer, a man named Gary Lopez, worked his console with practiced efficiency. Krell fleet is moving to intercept, counting 23 warships, various classes. They are charging weapons. Let them, Nicole said. Give them one chance. Broadcast on all frequencies. The communication went out in perfect Krell language. This is Captain Nicole Sanders of the Earth battleship Retribution. You fired on our children. You murdered them because we were not fast enough to abandon our home. Leave this system immediately, or we will remove you. You have 60 seconds to begin your departure. General Thaxeron heard the message and laughed. Humans making threats. How amusing. All ships open fire. Destroy them. The Krell fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams, all of it focused on the human ships. The energy signature was massive, enough firepower to level a continent. The human shields absorbed it all without even flickering. Their turn, Nicole said quietly. Fire. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations. The human ships did not use energy weapons like the rest of the galaxy. They used kinetic kill vehicles, tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. The physics were simple and brutal. Mass times velocity equals destruction. The rods moved too fast for Krell sensors to track properly. They punched through energy shields that were designed to stop plasma and lasers, not solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The first Krell battlecruiser simply came apart, its hull shredding like paper as the kinetic weapons tore through it. The second ship tried to evade, firing thrusters and rolling to present a smaller target. The human targeting systems adjusted in microseconds. 3 more rods hit the ship, and it exploded in a ball of superheated gas. Gary Lopez called out targets with mechanical precision. Ship 3 destroyed. Ship 4 disabled. Ship 5 attempting to flee. Intercepted and destroyed. Ship 6 powering down weapons. Ship 7 requesting mercy. In 11 minutes, the entire Krell fleet was gone. 23 warships reduced to debris and a handful of escape pods. Not a single human ship had taken damage. Not a single shot had missed its target. On the planet's surface, General Thaxron watched through the windows as his fleet died. He reached for his communicator with shaking hands, trying to call for reinforcements, trying to warn the Dominion that the humans were not what they seemed. The building's communication system activated on its own. Captain Nicole Sanders appeared on every screen, her face calm and cold. General Thaxron, you will take your surviving soldiers and leave this world. You have 1 hour. There will be no second warning, no negotiation, no mercy. You killed our children. We destroyed your fleet. Consider yourselves fortunate that we distinguish between soldiers and civilians even when you do not. The screen went dark. Thaxron looked around at his officers, seeing fear in their eyes for the first time. These were Krell warriors trained from birth for combat, and they were terrified. Evacuate the planet, he said quietly. Leave everything. Just get our people out. Across 7 star systems, the same scene played out. Every species that had taken advantage of human patience found themselves facing human fury. Every government that had seized human assets watched their military forces crumble. Every alien who had laughed at the gentle humans learned why humanity had been so careful about showing their teeth. The Vexian collective had claimed a human mining station in the Tau Ceti system. Commander Lisa Grant led a strike force that reclaimed it in 14 minutes. The Vexian ships fled without firing a shot. The Draxian Empire had taxed human trade ships passing through their space, basically stealing cargo and calling it legal. Admiral Karen White personally led a blockade of their primary trade route. Within a day, the Draxians were begging for negotiations. The Zelthi Republic had imprisoned human merchants on false charges, using them as hostages to extract better trade deals. Intelligence Director Chris Morgan did not send ships. He sent information. Classified Zelthi government documents appeared on every public network in their space. Corruption, lies, secret deals. Their government collapsed in a week. On Proxima Station, the council held an emergency session. The chamber that had been full of confident alien representatives now held frightened diplomats who were starting to understand the mistake they had made. High Arbiter Zelix tried to call for order, but his voice shook. The humans have attacked council members. This is an act of war. We must respond with the full force of the council military. A new human representative entered the chamber, Colonel Jason Burke, formerly of Earth's Special Operations Command. He walked with the confident stride of a man who had seen real combat, not the political games played in council halls. He wore a military dress uniform, dark blue with medals that meant nothing to the aliens but everything to humans who knew their history. You want to respond? Jason asked. Then respond. Gather your fleets, make your threats, see what happens. He walked to the human chair and remained standing. We gave you 300 years of patience. We smiled while you insulted us. We negotiated while you robbed us. We compromised while you pushed us around. And you thought that meant we were weak. You thought we were harmless. Jason pulled out a data pad and placed it on the podium. This contains the tactical analysis of every major military force in council space. We know your ship designs, your weapons capabilities, your strategic doctrines. We have known for decades. We have been watching, analyzing, preparing for the day you pushed too far. He looked around the chamber. You killed 3 of our children. We destroyed your fleets. We call that mercy. We could have done so much worse. We still can if you make us. The council sat in silence. They had no response. What could they say? The humans had demonstrated technological and tactical superiority that nobody had imagined. The peaceful species had revealed themselves as the most dangerous force in known space. So here is what happens next. Jason continued. You will return everything you have taken from humanity. Every world, every station, every ship, every stolen cargo. You will formally apologize for your treatment of human interests, and you will recognize that humanity is not a junior partner in this council. We are equals, or we are enemies. Choose. In her office on Earth, President Victoria Lang watched the broadcast of the council session. General Dixon stood beside her. We did it, he said quietly. We showed them what we can do. Yes, Victoria replied. Now comes the hard part. We have to decide what to do with this power. We have to decide if we become them, or if we remember why we chose peace in the first place. She looked at the photos on her desk. 3 children smiling at the camera, Sophie, Jacob, and Emma, taken from a school newsletter on Kepler 442b. They would never grow up. They would never have families of their own. They had died because the galaxy thought human lives did not matter. We showed them our teeth, Victoria said. We reminded them what we can be when we stop choosing peace. But we need to remember something too. We need to remember that we are better than this. We are better than fear and violence and revenge. She stood up and looked out at Earth, the blue planet that had given birth to a species capable of such terrible things and such beautiful things. We stopped smiling. Now we need to decide when to smile again. The Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike anything in their history. For 6 days, humanity had systematically dismantled every military force that had wronged them. The speed and efficiency of human operations shocked even their own citizens. 300 years of peaceful exploration had hidden the fact that humanity never stopped being very, very good at war. High Arbiter Zelix called an emergency meeting of the Inner Council, the representatives from the 17 most powerful species. They met in a secure chamber deep inside Proxima Station, away from public eyes and recording devices. We must respond, Zelix insisted. If we allow humanity to attack council members without consequences, we lose all authority. Every minor species will think they can challenge us. Ambassador Felshore of the Draxian Empire shook his head. His species had learned firsthand what human fury looked like. You do not understand. The humans were holding back. Those demonstrations were warnings, not actual war. If we push them further, we may discover capabilities we cannot match. Impossible, Zelix snapped. No single species can stand against the combined might of the Council. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. We will gather our forces and show humanity that there are consequences for aggression. The order went out across Council space. Every member species was required to contribute ships to a joint fleet. The goal was simple. Mass enough military power to intimidate humanity back into their place. They would surround human space, demonstrate overwhelming force, and demand surrender. Within 2 weeks, over 3,000 warships gathered at the edge of human territory. It was the largest fleet ever assembled, representing 17 different species and hundreds of years of military development. Surely, the council leaders thought, surely this would be enough. On Mars, Admiral Karen White watched the fleet assemble through her command center displays. Her staff expected orders for defensive positions, for evacuation of border colonies, for desperate preparation against impossible odds. Instead, she smiled. Not the diplomatic smile humans had worn for 3 centuries, but something older and more dangerous. They gathered their entire fleet in one location, she observed. How convenient. How very, very stupid. Her chief of staff, Captain Ben Coleman, looked confused. Ma'am, they outnumber us 10 to 1. Maybe more. How is that convenient? Because, Captain, they are thinking about this like a traditional war. They see ships and guns and think that is what matters. They still do not understand what we are. Karen pulled up a system map and began highlighting locations. For 300 years, we have been building infrastructure throughout Council space. Trade stations, communication relays, mining operations, cargo waypoints. We put them everywhere, and nobody paid attention because we were just harmless humans doing harmless human things. She tapped a control, and the map changed. Suddenly, every human installation showed weapon signatures. Every peaceful trade station had hidden missile batteries. Every communication relay included targeting sensors. Every mining operation concealed railguns. We have been preparing for this since the day we joined the Council, Karen continued. We hoped it would never be necessary. We prayed we would never need to activate these systems, but we are human, and humans prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. She looked at her staff, seeing understanding dawn on their faces. Send the activation codes. Protocol Endgame is now in effect. Let us show them what human patience has built. Across Council space, thousands of seemingly innocent installations suddenly revealed their true nature. The cargo station at Rigel lit up with targeting systems. The communication relay near Betelgeuse activated weapon platforms that had been disguised as antenna arrays. The mining operation in the Pleiades cluster turned out to be a fortress with enough firepower to level a moon. The Council fleet found themselves surrounded, not by human warships, but by the infrastructure they had taken for granted. Every trade route they used, every communication channel they relied on, every refueling station they needed had been quietly weaponized over 3 centuries. Captain Rachel Moore commanded the stealth carrier Phantom, a ship designed to hide in the shadows of space and watch everything. She had been observing the Council fleet for days, cataloging their formations, analyzing their tactics. waiting for the order to act. All ships, she broadcast on a secure human channel. Remember what we are about to do. We are not here to kill. We are here to teach. Fire only on military targets. Disable, do not destroy unless necessary. Show them we are better than they think we are. The trap closed. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroids opened fire. Trade stations that were supposed to be neutral activated their defenses. Mining equipment that was really disguised military hardware lit up Council ships with targeting lasers. The Council fleet panicked. Some ships tried to fight back. Most tried to flee. They quickly discovered that the human network covered every escape route. There was nowhere to run that did not take them past another hidden weapons system. High Arbiter Zelix watched the disaster unfold from his flagship. Ship after ship reported damage, disabled engines, destroyed weapons. The humans were systematically taking apart the largest military force ever assembled, and they were doing it without deploying their main fleet. How? He whispered. How did we not see this? His tactical officer, a young Vexian named Court, pulled up historical data. Sir, reviewing records. Humans have been installing these systems for 200 years. Every construction project, every expansion, every innocent upgrade. They were building a weapon network while we thought they were building trade infrastructure. Why did our intelligence not catch this? They did, sir. 17 times over the past century. Our analysts warned that human construction projects had military applications. Each time the reports were dismissed because humans were peaceful. We saw what we expected to see. On Earth, Intelligence Director Chris Morgan sat in his office reviewing the operation. Everything was going according to plan. Better than plan, actually. The Council was learning the lesson without massive casualties. Humans were demonstrating power without becoming the monsters they feared becoming. His deputy, a woman named Susan Hill, brought him a concerning report. Sir, we have intercepted communications from a classified Council facility. They are discussing the use of a biological weapon against Earth. Chris went very still. Details. It is called Project Extinction. A virus designed to target human DNA specifically. They have been developing it for 40 years as an ultimate deterrent. High Arbiter Zelix has authorized its deployment. Chris stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the Earth below. Billions of people going about their lives, unaware that someone was planning to kill them all. His job was to protect them, to see threats before they materialized, to keep humanity safe from those who wish them harm. When will they launch? He asked. Estimated 3 days. The weapon is at a facility on Draxia Prime. Send in the team. I want that facility secured, the weapon captured, and every scientist involved extracted safely. Do not harm civilians. Do not cause collateral damage. Be better than them. 3 days later, Colonel Jason Burke stood before the Council once more. He walked to the center podium and placed a small device on it. The device projected a hologram showing classified Council files, research data, weapon specifications. This, Jason said quietly, is Project Extinction, a biological weapon designed to kill every human in existence. Your ultimate answer to the human problem. You are going to deploy it on Earth. You are going to commit genocide. The Council chamber erupted in denials and accusations. Several species claimed they knew nothing about it. Others stayed silent, their guilt obvious. We captured the facility 2 days ago, Jason continued. Your scientists are in our custody, treated well and according to your own laws regarding prisoners. Your weapon is secured, and we have copied all the data. He pulled out a data chip and held it up. This chip contains not just the human targeting virus. It contains modified versions targeting every species in this chamber. We now have the ability to commit genocide on a galactic scale. We could kill everyone everywhere with the push of a button. The silence was absolute. Every representative stared at the chip with horror. But we will not, Jason said softly. We will destroy this weapon. We will release the scientists back to their homes. We will pretend this never happened. Do you know why? He looked around the chamber. Because we are better than you. You tried to kill billions of us, and we will respond by making sure nobody can ever kill billions of anyone. That is the difference between humanity and the rest of you. We know what it means to be monsters. We have been monsters. We chose to be better. Jason set the chip on the podium. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when you threaten our home. Now you know. We can destroy your fleets. We can infiltrate your systems. We can turn your own weapons against you. We can do all of this while still maintaining our principles, still refusing to become the evil we fight against. He walked toward the exit. "The war is over, you lost. Now we will decide what kind of peace we want. And I promise you, it will be a peace that protects everyone, not just the strong. That is what humanity does. We protect the weak, even when the weak tried to destroy us." 6 months had passed since what historians were now calling the Week of Broken Smiles. The galaxy had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a humbler organization now. Species that had once pushed others around were suddenly very interested in following rules and respecting boundaries. On Earth, President Victoria Lang faced the most important decision of her career. The military victory had been complete. Every species that had wronged humanity had apologized. The Krell Dominion had dissolved as member worlds declared independence from the government that had led them to disaster. Every stolen human asset had been returned. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But fear was not what Victoria wanted. She had spent 300 years building a human civilization based on cooperation and peace. She had watched that civilization reveal its capacity for violence and efficiency in war. Now she had to decide what came next. She called for a global referendum. Every human on Earth and in the colonies would vote on a single question. What kind of species should humanity be going forward? The question seemed simple, but the implications were enormous. In the streets of New York, people debated in cafes and parks. Some argued that humanity should isolate themselves, cut ties with the galaxy that had treated them so poorly. Why deal with aliens who saw humans as weak? Why risk future conflicts? Better to stay behind secure borders and focus on human interests alone. Others wanted dominance. They said humanity had proven their superiority in every field that mattered. Military strength, technological innovation, strategic thinking. Why not take their rightful place as the leading species? Why not make the rules instead of following them? Still others called for revenge. They remembered the 3 dead children. They remembered decades of being pushed around, insulted, robbed. They wanted every species that had wronged humanity to pay a price that would never be forgotten. The debate raged for weeks. News programs hosted experts who argued all sides. Social media filled with passionate arguments. Families disagreed at dinner tables. It was the most important conversation humanity had ever had with itself. General Paul Dixon retired from military service the day after the vote was announced. He had led human ground forces through the war, coordinated operations across 7 star systems, helped humanity win a victory that should have been impossible. Now he was done. Why retire now? His aide asked. You're at the peak of your career. Because what we do next should not be decided by soldiers, Paul replied. We had our moment. We showed the galaxy what we can do in war. Now civilians need to decide what we do in peace. That is how it should be. He returned to his home in Colorado and spent his days hiking in the mountains. Sometimes reporters found him and asked for interviews. He always refused. His war was over. He did not want to influence what came next. Admiral Karen White made a different choice. She requested transfer to diplomatic service and was appointed as Earth's new ambassador to the Galactic Council. When asked why someone with her military background would want a diplomatic role, she gave a simple answer. Because I know what we are capable of in war. That means I also know why peace is valuable. The best diplomats are not the ones who have never seen violence. They are the ones who have seen it and understand why it should be avoided. She arrived at Proxima Station wearing a diplomatic uniform instead of a military one. The alien representatives watched her nervously as she took the human chair. They remembered her tactical genius, her ruthless efficiency, her ability to turn their own infrastructure against them. I am here, Karen said to the assembled council, to work with you on building a better system. Not a system where the strong dominate the weak. Not a system where species can murder children without consequences, but a real system of equals with real protections for everyone. High Arbiter Zelix was gone, removed by his own people for his failures. The new council chair was a moderate Vexian named Korthan, who had opposed the war from the beginning. He looked at Karen with something that might have been hope. Ambassador White, will humanity return to the council as partners? That depends, Karen replied. We will not return to be your punching bag. We will not smile while you insult us. We will not negotiate away our rights to keep false peace. But if you are willing to build something real, something fair, then yes, we will return. On Kepler 442b, Peter Hayes walked through the colony that had almost been lost. The streets were full of people again. Children played in parks. Farms produced food. The community had rebuilt, stronger and more determined than before. But 3 graves sat in the central plaza, never to be forgotten. Sophie Turner, Jacob Cole, and Emma Price had monuments now. Fresh flowers appeared every day, left by people who had never met them, but would always remember what their deaths had meant. A Krell ship requested permission to land. Peter almost denied it out of habit, out of anger, out of grief. But he approved it instead, curious what they wanted. A Krell delegation emerged, led by a female named Shirex, who had been a junior officer on one of the ships humanity had destroyed. She walked slowly to the memorial and knelt before it, a gesture of submission in Krell culture. "I was there," she said quietly. "I was on the ship when General Thaxron ordered the shot that killed these children. I tried to argue against it. I failed. I have carried that failure for 6 months." She placed a crystal at the base of the memorial, a Krell funeral offering. "My species has learned what yours learned long ago. That strength without wisdom leads to disaster. That cruelty is not the same as power, that some lines should never be crossed." Peter stood silent for a long moment. He could have ordered her to leave. He could have raged at her. He could have blamed her for being part of the system that had killed innocent children. Instead, he helped her to her feet. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for remembering them." The vote results came in after 3 weeks. Humanity had decided. By a clear majority, they chose to return to the council, but on their own terms. They would pursue peace, but never again from a position of weakness. They would smile, but everyone would know the smile was a choice, not a necessity. President Victoria Lang addressed the human species one final time before her term ended. She had decided not to run for re-election, feeling that someone new should lead humanity into whatever came next. "We faced a choice," she said from the same podium where she had announced the evacuation of Kepler 442b. We could become isolated, bitter, and alone. We could become conquerors, taking what we wanted because we had the power to do so. We could become vengeful, punishing those who wronged us until they could never recover. She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We chose none of these paths. We chose to be what we have always tried to be, a species that knows our capacity for violence but chooses cooperation instead. A species that has been to the dark places and came back with wisdom, not just scars. For 300 years we smiled because we remembered what we could become if we stopped smiling. The galaxy mistook that for weakness. Now they know the truth. Now they understand that when humanity chooses peace, we are choosing something difficult and valuable, not something easy and cowardly." On Proxima Station, Ambassador Karen White presented humanity's new charter to the Council. It was a document that would reshape galactic society, written by humans who had studied their own history and learned from their own mistakes. The charter included protections for small species, rules about military action that required genuine threat, not just convenience, systems of accountability for council members, rights that could not be negotiated away for political expediency. It was everything humanity had wished existed when they were being pushed around. "This is not a demand," Karen said. "This is an offer. We are showing you what we learned from our own history. We are sharing the lessons we paid for in blood over thousands of years. You can accept these ideas, modify them, debate them, but you cannot go back to the old ways. We will not allow it, and if we refuse?" Corthan asked carefully. Karen smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and friendly, but her eyes remained serious. "Then we will build this system ourselves, with species who want to join us, and you will watch from the outside wondering why everyone else is prospering while you cling to old ways that never worked." Over the following months, the galaxy began to change. Some species resisted at first, clinging to their old advantages, but others saw the wisdom in humanity's proposals. Small species that had been bullied for centuries suddenly had protections and voices. The council became less of a club for the powerful, and more of an actual governing body with rules that applied to everyone. Captain Nicole Sanders oversaw the decommissioning of the Retribution. The massive battleship that had destroyed the Krell fleet was being mothballed, placed in storage where it could be recalled if needed but would hopefully gather dust forever. "Feels strange," her tactical officer Gary Lopez said. "We just proved how effective these ships are. Now we are putting them away." "That is the point," Nicole replied. "We keep them ready, but we do not use them unless we must. That is what separates us from the species who start wars because they can. We end wars because we can. Then we put away the weapons and try to do better." New ships were being built to replace. 10 years had passed since the war that changed everything. A new generation was growing up in a galaxy that remembered humanity's fury and respected their restraint. Children born after the conflict learned about it in history classes, struggling to imagine a time when their species had been seen as weak. Ambassador Karen White stood in the council chambers, now renovated to reflect the new egalitarian principles humanity had championed. Gone were the tiered seating arrangements that had emphasized power differences. Every species sat at the same level. Every voice carried the same weight in votes that actually mattered. Today was significant. The council was voting on the admission of a new member species, the Rin, a small aquatic people whose homeworld sat in a strategically valuable location. Under the old system, a major power would have claimed them as a protectorate, essentially colonizing them while calling it protection. Under the new charter, they would join as full equals with all the rights that entailed. The vote is unanimous, Chair Corthan announced. Welcome to the Galactic Council, representatives of Rin. The small delegation of Rin bobbed with excitement in their water-filled containment suits. Their lead diplomat, whose name translated roughly as Swift Current, spoke with obvious emotion. We thank the Council, and we especially thank humanity for creating a system where small species can exist safely. Our children will grow up free, because you chose to make things better instead of just different. After the session ended, Swift Current approached Karen privately. Ambassador White, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Is it true that your species once killed each other over small differences? That you had wars among yourselves that killed millions? Karen nodded slowly. Yes, we were our own worst enemies for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. How did you stop? How did you become what you are now? We never really stopped being what we were, Karen admitted. We just got better at controlling it. We learned that our capacity for violence could be channeled into protecting others instead of hurting them. We learned that strength means nothing if you do not use it wisely. Mostly, we learned to remember our mistakes so we would not repeat them. On Earth, the memorial to Sophie Turner, Jacob Cole, and Emma Price had been replicated in every human colony. The 3 children who died had become symbols of everything humanity fought to prevent. Fresh flowers appeared at each memorial every day, left by people who wanted to remember the cost of peace and the price of war. Peter Hayeshead, retired from colonial administration and now taught history at the Academy on Kepler 442b. His students asked him what it had been like, living through those events, watching humanity transform from victims to victors and then to something more complicated. It was terrifying, he told them honestly. We knew we had power. We knew we could hurt people. The scary part was not using that power. The scary part was watching ourselves and wondering if we would become the monsters we fought against. A student named Kevin Brooks raised his hand. But we did not become monsters. We won and then we stopped. Why was that scary? Because we could have kept going, Peter explained. We could have punished everyone who ever wronged us. We could have taken whatever we wanted. The power to do terrible things is always scary, even when you choose not to use it. Especially then, because you know you might change your mind. On Mars, Admiral Karen White's old command center had been converted into a military academy. Young officers from dozens of species trained together, learning not just tactics and strategy but ethics and restraint. The human instructors emphasized one lesson above all others. The purpose of strength is to protect the weak, not to dominate them. Captain Nicole Sanders taught a course on asymmetric warfare. She used the Battle of Kepler 442b as a case study, breaking down every decision, every shot, every consequence. Her students came from species that had fought against humanity and species that had fought alongside them. The Krell fleet outnumbered us, she explained. They had good ships, trained crews, solid tactics. So why did they lose in 11 minutes? A Krell student, one of the first of his species to join the academy, raised a claw hesitantly. Because humans fight differently. Because you prepared for 300 years. Because you saw us coming long before we saw you. Partially correct, Nicole said. But the real reason is simpler. They thought they were fighting a battle. We knew we were teaching a lesson. Every shot we fired was calculated not just for military effect, but for political impact. We destroyed their fleet so thoroughly that nobody else would want to test us. But we did it so cleanly that nobody could claim we were monsters. That is the difference between winning a fight and winning a war. Intelligence Director Chris Morgan had also retired, replaced by a younger generation that had grown up knowing the truth about human capabilities. He spent his days writing a classified history of human intelligence operations, documenting every secret, every deception, every carefully planned operation that had prepared humanity for the war they hoped would never come. His successor, Director Angela Foster, asked him once why he was writing it all down. So we can learn from it? So we can use these techniques again? No, Chris replied. So we remember what we are capable of and why we must be careful. Every dirty trick in that document worked. Every manipulation, every spy, every stolen secret gave us advantages. But each one also cost us something. Each one meant lying to people who trusted us, using people who believed in us, doing things we are not proud of. The next generation needs to know that winning is not free. It costs, even when you win. The Krell Dominion had reformed under new leadership. The species that had started the war by killing 3 children now sent delegations to human worlds, seeking to learn how humanity controlled their aggressive instincts. Some humans refused to meet with them. Others, like Peter Hayes, chose to teach them. A Krell officer named Velgon attended Peter's class on Kepler 442b. After the lecture, he approached the professor nervously. Sir, I was part of General Thaxeron's fleet. I was on one of the ships your people destroyed. I ejected in an escape pod and was rescued by human forces. You treated us well, better than we deserved after what we did. Peter studied the young Krell. What are you doing now? I teach at our military academy. I tell our young warriors about honor, about restraint, about the difference between strength and cruelty. I teach them what your species taught us. Good, Peter said quietly. Then maybe those 3 children did not die for nothing. Maybe their deaths taught us all something important. On Proxima Station, a human child was born to parents who worked in the diplomatic corps. She was the first human born on the station since humanity's return to the Council. Representatives from a dozen species brought gifts, traditional blessings, and well wishes. The mother, a diplomatic aide named Ruth Palmer, watched alien beings cooing over her daughter and marveled at how much had changed. She will grow up in a different galaxy than we did, Ruth said to her husband. A trade negotiator named Frank Palmer. Better? Frank asked. Different. Hopefully better. She will never know a time when humans were seen as weak. But she also will not know the fear we felt, wondering if we had gone too far, if we had revealed too much, if we could control what we had unleashed. President Victoria Lang had written her memoirs. The book was required reading in schools across human space. She wrote honestly about her fears during the crisis, her doubts about the decisions she made, her relief when humanity chose wisdom over vengeance. The final chapter was called The Day We Smiled Again. In it, she described the moment she knew humanity would be okay, would remain who they wanted to be despite having shown who they could be. It was 6 months after the war. She was visiting Kepler 442b for the memorial dedication. A group of human children were playing with Rin children who were visiting with their parents. The species were so different, land dwellers and water breathers, but they had figured out games they could play together. They were laughing, genuine and carefree. A Rin parent approached Victoria nervously. Madam President, is it safe for our children to play with yours? We have heard stories about what humans can do. We know what happened to the Krell. Victoria had smiled then, really smiled, for the first time in months. Your children are safer with mine than they would be anywhere else in the galaxy. Because human children learn from a young age that strength means protecting those who need protection. That power means standing between danger and those who cannot defend themselves. Your kids are safe with ours. I promise you that. Now 10 years later, that promise had become reality. Human children grew up learning not just their own history, but the histories of dozens of species. They learned what humanity had been, what they had almost become, and what they chose to be instead. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still moments when violence seemed like the easier answer. But now there was a framework for resolving issues, a system that valued justice over power, a council that actually protected the weak instead of enabling the strong. And humanity stood at the center of it, not as conquerors or lords, but as the species who remembered what it was like to be weak and chose to make sure others would never feel that way again. Ambassador Karen,